Hi everybody, this video today is going to cover lesson 2.2, which is inequalities. So we solved equations in the last video, and in this video we're going to solve inequalities. Solving inequalities is exactly like solving equations. You just have to really pay attention to the sign and which way it's pointing. And we're also going to talk about how to graph those on a number line, and this is a rule that we learned last unit when we were talking about functions, and the same rule applies to this unit. That is, you're going to be using parentheses if there's not an equal sign or an open dot, and you're going to use the square brackets if there is an equal sign and a filled in dot. So let's go ahead and get started. One thing is, in the last lesson we learned that instead of multiplying this out, you can divide it, and you can do it either way. I'm going to divide it. I get 5m plus 5 equals 45. Actually, it's not equals, is it? I need to change that to be less than. Okay. Then I'm going to subtract my 5 from both sides. So I get 5m is less than 40. And I divide by 5, and I get m is less than 8. Okay, hopefully everyone knows how to solve that. That was easy. Now, how to put it onto a number line. When you have a less than sign, you used to put an open dot. We're going to stop using the open dots, and we're going to use these parentheses instead. So let me make some space. All right, for your number line, I don't really care where you start. It's not like you have to put 0 in the middle or anything like that. You can put your numbers anywhere you want, but obviously you do need to include 8, and you need to include some things below 8. So I might just go 8 here, and then 10, and 6. All right, there's my number line. M is less than 8. So it used to be that you would do an open dot on the 8, and you would go to the left. We're going to change that a little bit. We're not going to use an open dot. We're still going to go to the left because it is less than, but we are going to put a parenthesis instead. So I'm going to put my answer, and I'm going to curve it this way so it looks like this. That means m is less than 8. That means all the numbers that I'm talking about is everything less than 8. Okay, let's try another one. It's a little bit more complex, right? There's a lot going on here. So I'm going to start off by subtracting this 3 to both sides. And I'm also going to subtract that 5k from both sides. I don't know if you all have done that, subtracting 2 steps in one, but that's okay. You can do that. So if I do that, now let's see what I have. I still have my 4 times 4k minus 6 minus 5k is less than or equal to, and now this is 9. I'm going to go ahead and distribute. I know I've been talking about dividing it, but dividing it doesn't always make sense. In this case, I think distributing it is going to go ahead and make more sense. So I'm going to distribute this, and that gives me a 16k minus 24 minus 5k is less than or equal to 9. Now, the k's are on the same side. I can combine those like terms. It gives me an 11k, and I can add that 24 to the other side. So let me do that, and I get less than or equal to 24. That's 33. I'm kind of jammed up for space here. I'm going to divide by 11, and I get k is less than or equal to 3. Okay, once again, pretty easy as far as inequalities go. That's nothing new. Solving that was nothing new. Let's go ahead and put it on the number line. I'm going to put my numbers down here. And again, I don't care where your numbers go. I'm going to put my 3 in the middle like I usually do. 5 over here, 1 over here. That works. Less than or equal to. Less than or equal to means we're going to use a square bracket. So I'm going to put the bracket like that, and I'm going to draw my line like this. Let me talk a little bit about the placement of the line. I don't care whether you do it up above like this or whether you do it on the line itself. I do need to be able to read it. If I can, if I'm looking at your paper, I need to be able to read your paper. So whichever way is fine, but I do need to be able to read it. Okay, the only thing I was wanting to point out here is this was a less than, it's a parenthesis. This is a less than or equal to, it is a square bracket. Okay, these next two problems don't have really anything new to add, so I'm actually going to skip those, and if we need to do those in class, we can. But let's just, for the sake of the video, let's skip those two and move down to number 5. Because number 5 is a new concept, is switching the inequality sign. And I'm sure you remember, as I was going over these, sometimes you're supposed to switch it. And when is it that you need to do that? So let's explore that a little bit. If I'm solving this for n, I also, with inequalities especially, I like to keep the variable on the left. Let's go ahead and write that in the margin because that actually is a pretty significant point. When we are solving equations, I don't care where the variable goes. But when we are solving inequalities, I want you to keep that variable on the left. So let's try to keep that variable on the left. So as we look at number 5, the variable is on the left. We want to keep it there. And that means we want to put all the numbers on the other side. So I think I'm going to add that 7 first to start off. So when I add the 7, I get negative 6 times 1 minus 2n is less than negative 90. I've been talking about you could divide here, and I know that does divide in, but I'm going to go ahead and distribute out. So just because we've got a lot going on here. So you can do it either way, but I'm going to distribute this. So this is a negative 6. That's plus 12n. And then on the right-hand side, I still have my 90, negative 90. I need to add my 6 now. And so I have 12n less than negative 86. I need to divide by 12, I get n is less than negative 86 over 12, which does not simplify very easily. It does simplify down to negative 43 over 6, but it's not a whole number. That's okay. We can leave it as a fraction. In this class, we never use mixed numbers, and improper fractions are really how I would prefer to have answers. Not decimals unless I say so, but usually this is what we want, improper fractions. Okay, so if I put that on the number line, how am I going to put that on the number line? Well, one thing is, if I put that in my calculator and think about it as a decimal, it is 7.1666 repeating. I know that because I took out my calculator. So I'm going to go ahead and make a number line here, and I'm going to make it like with a 7 in the middle. I'm going to make it with like a negative 7 in the middle. Okay, I didn't really like this problem for the notes. I wish it would have come out as an integer, but it didn't. That's okay. On my number line, if I had more space, I probably would go ahead and put that actual number, negative 43 over 6, up here. But that number, like I said, is about negative 7.166 repeating. And so that's about right here. I'm just estimating. And it is a less than, does not have an equals, so it's going to go the other way. Okay, notice a couple things. This concept here is switching the inequality sign. We didn't switch it. We didn't need to. It is true that if there's negatives, that's when you switch it, but nothing here happened that I had to do any dividing by a negative, and so I didn't have to switch it. So as it turns out, there was no switching. I just had to keep it pointing the same way every time. And when I got to the bottom, that's n is less than, and less than goes that way. Okay, let's look at the next one and see what happens here. All right, I'm going to start once again. I'm going to subtract this 2. That's 161. I'm going to distribute this, and that's going to give me 35c plus 56. I'm going to subtract my 56, and I'm going to use a calculator. And when I do that, I get 105 is greater than 35c. I need to divide by 35, and that gives me 3 is greater than c. All right, now, do you remember a minute ago I said, hey, don't leave your variable over there. I want your variable on the left. So how do we do that? Well, it was 3 is greater than c. I'm going to flip the whole thing over. And so when I flip it over, I'm going to start with c on the left. I'm going to have my 3 on the right. I need to also flip my inequality sign. So the way that you do that is if it was pointing at the c in the beginning, it needs to be pointing at the c at the end. So that's one time when you would need to flip it, is if it's on the wrong side. So one time we need to flip it is when we need to flip it if it's on the right-hand side. We need to move it to the left. So to move that to the left, we flip it and we do that. I've run out of room on my number line, but I'm okay with that. Let's just skip the graphing because there's nothing interesting about that graph. I'm going to have to erase some of this, so make sure you get written down what you need to, or rewind if you need to, so I can make some space down here. I know I've been saying to divide, but you know what? Just because everyone's a little bit more comfortable distributing, I'm going to distribute it. So this is a negative 124, less than or equal to negative 32x plus 4. Subtract my 4, and I get negative 120 is less than or equal to negative 32x. Okay, here's something else. I need to divide by negative 32. And so when I divide by negative 32, I'm going to do that on my calculator. So once again, I get a decimal value, so I don't want to give a decimal though. I just need to give a reduced fraction. So one thing is a negative over a negative makes a positive. So this is going to give me a positive solution. It does not go in evenly, but 8 goes into the numerator 15 times, and 8 goes into the denominator 4 times. On the right-hand side, the negative 32's cancel, we get an x. Okay, now we just did something that was major, and that is we divided by a negative. When you divide by a negative, you have to flip that sign to make it point the other way. So we need to flip it because we divided by a negative. So there we are flipping it. Let's add that to our list on the side. Okay, we flip the sign when we divide by a negative number. Now, the other thing is the x is on the wrong side. So we have to flip it again back to the first rule because we want that x on the other side of the equal sign, or in this case, the inequality. So I need my x on the left. I need to flip my sign to point towards the x still, and I get 15 over 4. So that is a solution to my inequality. If I'm going to graph that, that as a decimal is 3.75. So again, your number line, you can number it any way you want to. I'm actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start at 3.0 and go to 3.5 and 4.0 and 4.5. So if this is a decimal is 3.75, then I'm going to put it right about here. It needs to be square because of the equal sign, and it's going to go like this. That's my inequality. As far as checking answers goes, you can plug this number in and it should equal. But as far as which way to shade it, pick a number that's not that number, but one that's on the side that you're shading. So like 3, that's an easy one. Pick a 3 and plug it in. And if it makes this system true, or this equation true, this inequality true, then it is shaded correctly. Number 8, we've talked about fractions. How do we get rid of fractions? We multiply by the reciprocal, or excuse me, the denominator. So we're going to multiply by the denominator. Those 4's cancel when I do that. It gives me a negative 8 plus y greater than or equal to negative 16. When I multiplied just now, I multiplied by a positive number. When you multiply by a positive, you do not have to divide. But if you had multiplied by a negative, you would have had to divide. So our rule here, flip the sign when dividing by a negative. You also need to do it when you multiply. Okay, both of them. Let's add that 8 to both sides. So we get y greater than or equal to negative 8. Kept the sign because we didn't divide by any negatives. We don't have to move the y because it's on the left-hand side, which is what we want. Negative 8, so I don't know, let's go negative 10, negative 8, negative 6, negative 4. Negative 8 is here. Greater than or equal to goes this way. And again, to check that, you can plug in a negative 6 and see if it works. If it makes it true, then it is shaded in the right direction. Okay, that is how we graph and shade with solving inequalities and plotting them on a number line. Remember to write something down in the summary. Remember to write questions in the margin if you have questions, and we will do some work on this next time.